Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is the Have I Told You About This show. I am Brad Kumjanik, your host. The whole reason we're here is because this week my mind took me somewhere else, and I've got to share it with you. So far, we've talked about why Survivor alliances literally changed reality television. We've talked about the amazing, phenomenal, colossal Star Wars arcade game and how young me walked into the Aladdin's Castle arcade and was mind blown to hear voices from my favorite movie of all time coming out of that beautiful green, blue, and red raster arcade game, and how it changed my life and the arcades. Then we talked a little bit about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and the Timothy Chalamet Wonka movie, how they tie in together and form a perfect union of movies, a duo of movies that you almost wish you saw the Chalamet movie first because it totally paves the way for the original, which are two of my all-time favorite movies. And then that takes us to this week. What am I going to tell you about this week? Well, with that said, how about I tell you about this? Have I told you about malls, arcades, and nostalgia? You see, this week, like every week, I keep with me a little portable gaming device, whether it's a Switch or one of my little handheld, they're called Ambernick machines that play emulated old games or arcade games and what have you. I typically keep those with me in case I'm in line somewhere, maybe to, get food or what have you. And so I'll just pop that out and play some Amidar or maybe even the Star Wars arcade game, who knows. And this week, man, nostalgia just hit me. It hit me hard and it got me thinking about what we're going to talk about today. So, have I told you about malls, arcades, and nostalgia? Again, this week my mind drifted back to a much easier time in my life. When the weekends would come, my mom would take me over to the local mall. And when we were at that local mall, she would give me a roll of quarters and send me off to Aladdin's Castle arcade. She would tell me, make that money last now until lunch. It was $10 in quarters. It was like 100 to a young kid like me. Yes, I was spoiled. You'll have to forgive me. Then around lunchtime, I was expected to walk across the hall to the Luca Pizza and meet my mom, and where we would have an amazing lunch as always. Loved Luca Pizza. Big, thick Italian style slices of greasy pizza and some breadsticks and a Coke. Then we would head over about 5 stores down to the right to the record store, where just about halfway through on the back of the wooden paneled walls were the Atari 2600 games. And I'd go back and I would see, was there anything new, anything that would catch my eye? And if there was, well, it was probably bought for me. Yes, I was spoiled. You'll forgive me. But if not, well, then it was almost better because mom would say, well, nothing here. Why don't we go hit up Toys R Us? Because it's in the parking lot. We'd hit that up when the record stores came up empty. Man, do I miss those days. I can remember walking into those Aladdin's castles and seeing the new games up front, and I could not get those quarters into the token machines quick enough. I wonder, and won't you share with me down in the comments? Have you ever found yourself like scrolling through social media today? Whatever your particular form that you like to enjoy is, and only you get stopped dead in your tracks from scrolling because you see a photo of a long gone Toys R Us or a grainy snapshot of a mall arcade with glowing neon. Maybe it's a TikTok of someone unboxing their brand new vinyl record they just bought. Remember records? Or maybe even a meme about the agony and ecstasy of blowing on an old Nintendo NES game try to get it to work again. Suddenly, you're not just looking at a picture anymore. You're back there at that time. You can smell the smells, see the sights. You can remember. You can almost smell the plastic wrap on the game. You can hear the distant echo of the mall chatter of all the arcade game sounds. You feel the weight of that game box in your hand and remember what it was like to be reading the actual game manual from the game in the car on the way home so that you're ready to play that game the second you got home. And for a moment, the world feels both smaller and safer. So, on this episode of Have I Told You About This? Let's discuss malls, arcades, and nostalgia. We're going to dive deep into the emotional and cultural forces that make nostalgia so powerful in 2025. See, I was just racked by it today, so I went into a deep dive. Look, I'm a psychologist by trade, also a pastor. I love data and analytics. When these things come over me, I want to study, and then I want to share it with you. That's why I tell you about these things. Especially for us Gen Xers and older millennials, nostalgia is huge. We're going to explore why these memories of record stores, arcades, Toys R Us's, lunches at Luca, they're not just comforting. They're shaping what we buy, how we connect with each other, and even how we see the future. Now, along the way, I'm going to share some of my own stories with you. The thrill of hunting for the elusive Atari 2600 games, the magic of the lost art of the video game manual, and the bittersweet ache of seeing those places fade away. So grab some Cracker Jack. Make sure you get the prize out first. Sometimes I find myself eating the Cracker Jack while I'm playing the video game and not paying attention, and the prize ends up here and it shouldn't. So settle in. Let's take a journey, not just into the past, but into why the past matters. Alrighty, here we go. We're going to talk about the emotional core of nostalgia. Let me start with a simple question. Why does nostalgia feel so good? And sometimes even, why does it feel sad? You see, psychologists like myself, we've been studying this for decades, and the answers are more complex than you might think. Nostalgia isn't just a longing for a past time. It's a deeply layered emotion. See, it's a joy tinged with sadness, as some researchers have kind of termed it. When we remember those past moments, whether it's flipping through something like, I don't know, the Pac-Man Atari 2600 manual, love that manual. Or maybe even when we see this, a Toys R Us that are long gone, although I hear they're coming back. We're not just reliving good times. We're also feeling the loss of what's gone, the passage of time, and sometimes a touch of regret and loneliness. So more recent studies show that nostalgic memories actually change, get this, how we age. At first, our thoughts about nostalgia are mostly positive. They're full of warmth and connection to a time that we just loved and we felt happy. But over time, those memories can grow bittersweet, and the further away we get from that time that they actually happened, the more bittersweet and sad they get. The joy fades just a little each time you go back to a memory, and feelings like regret or longing become more pronounced. Yet, even as nostalgia becomes more complex, it still brings with it powerful benefits. It boosts our self-esteem. It helps us feel connected to others, and it gives our lives a sense of purpose and meaning. In fact, nostalgia is a universal emotion. There was a massive study done a few years ago across 29 countries around the globe. That study found that people absolutely everywhere, regardless of culture, race, age, creed, whatever, experience nostalgia. And it often seems to be triggered by three things: either music or a scent or the sight of something. And it's not just about the past. Nostalgia helps us cope with stress, loneliness, and uncertainty of our present. You see, nostalgia is a psychological resource. It's a way to remind ourselves of who we are, where we came from, and what matters most to us. So, when you find yourself feeling that pang or longing for a mall arcade, or maybe a record store, or a slice of Luca pizza, know you're not alone. You're tapping into something deeply human. It's a bittersweet emotion that connects us across generations and cultures. So, let's talk about generational patterns. Why is it that Gen Xers and older millennials like me feel nostalgia the most, the heaviest? Well, here's the thing. Not all generations experience nostalgia in the same way. We all experience it, but not the same way. Recent research shows that people like me, Gen Xers and older millennials, those of us born between 1965 and 1985, are really, really prone to strong waves of nostalgia. But why is that? I asked. Well, I was told it's about timing. You see, we grew up in an era of rapid change. The analog world of vinyl records and arcades and, hey, even one of these, shopping mall, gave way very quickly to the digital age. And it seemed to happen to me overnight. I can remember what it was like to rake leaves and mow lawns to save up for a game, or try my best on a test because my parents said if you do well on the test, we'll go out and get Pac-Man. I'll never forget that. Or how I would have to call my parents from a payphone to pick me up from the mall. To spending hours wandering through the mall with nothing but time and possibility. And then, almost suddenly, those places, those rituals disappeared. You know, there was a study done earlier this year that found that 76% of Gen Xers and millennials report strong feelings of nostalgia, but not just for eras of their childhood, even for eras even farther back. That's kind of crazy because you didn't even experience that time, right? But you just figure any time in the past was better and you had less responsibility. See, we're not just missing our own childhoods. We're drawn to a certain aesthetic and products and stories of earlier decades. And this historical nostalgia, it's especially strong for us millennials. And we use it as a way to manage the stress and anxiety of today and of our future. But again, it's not just about personal memory. Us Gen Xers and older millennials are leading the charge in reviving retro trends, in case you haven't noticed. I don't know if you've seen, but records are all the rage again. Vinyl is. How about buying retro video games? Whole stores dedicated to it. Or watching reboots of your classic TV shows or movies. You see, for us, nostalgia isn't just a feeling. It's a way of life. It's a bridge between the world we knew and the world we are desperately, and I mean desperately, trying to navigate today. All right, let's now talk a little bit about personal memories, particularly record stores, Toys R Us, and the ritual of the hunt. I want to take you back for a minute. Okay, come with me. Picture this. It's a Saturday afternoon in the early 1980s, okay? The mall is buzzing with people. You've just been to the arcade, and lo and behold, the brand new game Dragon's Lair shows up, and it looks like a cartoon, and your world's rocked. The air is thick with the scent of caramel corn from the caramel corn store that you're dying to have. But you know you can't. It's way too much sugar. And the smell of new plastic wrap on everything is everywhere. I'm actually clutching a crumpled up $5 bill, and I'm heading straight for the record store. The brand new Kiss album's out, and I gotta get it. The walls are lined with vinyl, some new, some used, all promising a world of sound I can't wait to explore. I flip through the bins and I'm looking for it, searching for that one album that I'd saved up for, the one with the wild cover art that looks like it was painted by a wizard on a sugar high. I find it, and I grab it, and I run up, and I give him the $5 that it took to buy the thing. There's my mom. We rush out, and where are we off to, I ask you? Toys R Us. Remember how good it felt? Do you remember grabbing a Toys R Us game slip? Do you remember that? The aisles at Toys R Us stretch on forever. Each one is a universe of possibility. And I make a beeline for the video game section. It's past the bikes and the action figures until I reach the Holy Grail. There are all the Atari 2600 games up, hanging up in their own spot. And right below them, the game slip. The boxes are works of art. Dragons, spaceships, knights in shining armor. Now, I know deep down that the game won't look anything like that cover, but that doesn't matter. The box art is a promise, and it's a spark for my imagination. I then turn the box over, scanning the screenshot right on the back. It wasn't even a real screenshot of the game. It was more like a MS Paint mock-up somebody had done. It was a pixelated dream of what the game could possibly be. But I didn't care. I was already hooked. So I grab that white slip of paper under the displayed game, clutch it, and head to the checkout with my heart pounding. And then the final ritual. Being in the car, tearing that plastic, sliding that cartridge out, seeing the art on the cartridge, and then pulling out the Holy Grail, the game manual. These weren't just instruction booklets. They were portals to another world. The manual told the story, introduced the characters, gave the lore, explained the rules, how to play. Sometimes it even included maps, lore, and secret codes. I would read it cover to cover on the way home. That way, I was ready to play the minute I got home. You see, those moments, the hunt, the anticipation, the sheer number of games and possibilities on the wall, the tactile joy of holding something real in your hand. That's all burned into my memory. And I know I'm not alone. For so many of us, those rituals defined our childhood. They're the reason that nostalgia hits us so hard. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the box art, shall we? Box art and marketing, when imagination had to fill in the gaps. You see, those game boxes. I recently bought a book of Atari 2600 art for game boxes, and it's one of my favorite visual books. I don't even care if there's words in it. I could stare at those pictures forever. If you grew up with the Atari 2600 and television, some of the ColecoVision, you know exactly what I mean. This is what you saw. The box art was wild. Epic battles, heroic quests, alien landscapes. Look at the Defender box. Look at it. There's a lady running around. The Defenders are trying to suck the people up. And we know what the arcade game looked like. The Atari 2600 game didn't look anything like it. And it certainly didn't look like that. The actual game was actually a handful of colored blocks and some bloops and bleeps. Was that misleading then? No. For most of us, it wasn't a con at all. It was an invitation to imagine. Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Remember imagination? It's gone, isn't it? That box art was like a book cover, a movie poster. It was a promise of adventure. We knew the game wouldn't look like the painting, but it didn't matter. The art fired up those imaginations. It made us believe that we were knights and astronauts or wizards. Even if the dragon on the back of the screenshot looked like a large green duck. On the back of that box, again, you'd see those awful MS Paint style screenshots, but they were often just hand drawn mock ups. It was the pre digital media era. It was hard to capture an actual screenshot, so publishers improvised. Sometimes the screenshots actually didn't look anything like the game at all. But again, it was the possibility, not the precision. Today, game marketing is all about photorealism and cinematic trailers. Imagination not needed. But back then, the gap between art and reality was part of the magic. It left room for your imagination, for storytelling, for making the game your own. If you ever doubt the power of box art, just ask any collector today. Those old boxes with the creases and scuffs and all are considered prized possessions, time capsules of a world and time when the imagination ruled. And today, they carry a very hefty price. Okay, next point, the lost art of that game manual. Let's talk about something that has joined the dinosaurs. It's extinct. Video game manual. If you bought a game in the 80s or 90s, say Barnstorming or Pac-Man, you didn't just get a cartridge and a disc, or lo and behold, a download code on a piece of paper. You got a book, sometimes dozens of pages long, filled with stories, arts, maps, and secrets. Early manuals were absolutely essential. Games didn't have tutorials or pop-up hints, or like the Horizon Zero Dawn game where Aloy tells you every time you miss something. If you wanted to know how to play, you read the manual. But they weren't dry instruction sheets. They were storytelling devices packed with lore, character bios, and world building. Some were written from the perspective of in-game characters or designed to look like ancient books or maybe even a survival guide. And oh, for role-playing games, the manual might even include spell lists or enemy descriptions or poems even. I remember poems or even books that they recommend you read. For action games, you get backstories, tips, sometimes even jokes or developer notes. Manuals were a bridge between the physical and the digital world. They were a way to make the game feel bigger, richer, and more immersive. But as games got more complex and digital distribution took over, manuals shrunk. Color printing, they said, was too expensive. Packaging got smaller, and companies pushed for green initiatives. By the late 2000s, manuals were little more than black and white pamphlets, and then finally replaced entirely by in-game tutorials. Today, if you want to know how to beat a boss or find a secret, you Google it. You go to YouTube. You find a game guide. Wikis, walkthroughs, YouTube guides, all that. It's convenient, sure. But something's lost. That tactile joy of flipping through the manual, the sense of discovery, the feeling that you were holding a piece of that game's soul. Collectors and fans, though, are keeping the legacy alive. I know of several websites that scan old manuals, like the pictures you're seeing here, and they share them online. Some indie publishers are even bringing back full-color manuals for retro-inspired games. But for many of us, the age of the manual is gone. A reminder of a time when games were more than just code. They were stories and rituals, and they were treasures. Now let's talk about the decline of malls and mall culture. So now let's zoom out a minute, shall we? Man, I just look at those pictures. Suncoast Video, go in there and see all the VHS tapes, which then obviously turned into DVDs, and then the stores closed. And then there were KB Toys, who had everything way overpriced and hardly had anything in the store. And then they were gone. Sam Goody. Yeah, I remember them. All those memories, record stores, arcades, Toys R Us, they were anchored in a very specific place, the mall. For Gen X and older millennials, the mall wasn't just a place to buy things, it was a destination. It was the place to be. All of your friends were there. It was a social hub. It was a rite of passage. You didn't go to the mall just to shop. You went to hang out with friends, to people watch, to sometimes eat bad food in the food court, to see things and to be seen. The mall was a world unto itself, timeless, a place where you could lose track of hours. For teenagers, it was freedom. For parents, sometimes a babysitter. But for families, it was a weekend ritual. But over the past 2 decades, that culture has faded. Reasons are many. Let's just say it in one word: Amazon, online shopping. The whole collapse of big box retailers. And then you had the pandemic. And then changing tastes among the younger generation. In 2020 alone, over 5,000 mall based stores closed. Think about that. And vacancy rates soared into the double digits. And by 2025, most estimates suggest that up to 87% of U.S. malls will be closed within the next 10 years. For many, the mall's not a destination any longer. It's an errand. It's a ghost town. It's a relic of a time long gone. The big anchor stores I used to go into, Sears, JCPenney's, even Toys R Us in some malls, they're gone or they're fading. Even the food courts are empty. Of course, the arcades are gone. What's lost isn't just a place to shop. It's a sense of community and shared experience. Malls were where you bumped into friends, you discovered new music, you finally beat that level in the arcade game. You found your newest treasure that you got to take home. You tried on clothes you couldn't afford, and you dreamt about the future. Their decline is way more, friends, than economic. It's cultural. It's emotional. For me, maybe you too. Deeply personal. Now, the disappearance of arcades. If the mall was the heart of our social life, the arcade was the pulse. In the late 70s and 80s, arcades were everywhere. They were buzzing with neon, packed with teenagers, alive with the sounds of Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and pinball machines. Arcades were more than just places to play games. They were community centers. They were battlegrounds for high scores. They were training grounds for social skills. You learned how to wait your turn, quarter up. You learned how to challenge strangers. You learned how to celebrate a win or shrug off a loss. The arcade was where technology met friendship, competition, and imagination. In my day, it was all about the high score, getting your name on that scoreboard. That's what mattered. But by the late 80s, arcades began to fade. Home consoles like the 2600, the NES, and the Sega Master System, well, they began to bring gaming into the living room. No quarters needed. Why spend quarters at the mall? Why drive to the mall when you could play these games at home? Of course, they looked nothing like the arcade game. But to parents, that didn't matter. And then came the video game crash of 1983. Let me just briefly touch on that. Really, what happened here is Atari, well, they lost the battle with Activision. You see, some of the Atari programmers decided they weren't making enough money. And it was true, they weren't. They were actually just seen as, and as a matter of fact, the owner of Atari actually called many of them who were complaining no better than the people that packaged the games themselves. So a group of them got together, actually a group of their finest programmers, and formed a company called Activision. And they became, a third party provider of video games for Atari. And Atari sued them and said, you can't do that. You can't make games for our system. This is our system. And of course, they lost. No patents were stolen. This was code they created on their own. And then they were the first, and before long, friends, the Purina Dog Food Company made a game called Chase the Chuck Wagon. It there were games that never ever ever should have been games. I remember going in to those Toys R Us's. I remember going into the record stores and seeing maybe three, four, five lines of games, and then a month later there were 30 lines of games, and you would look at some of these things and saying, "That's not a game. What is that? This is junk." And the games were $40, $50, became 30, then 20, then 5, then there were whole bins of them for $1. And the video game market crashed. And along with it went a hobby we loved. Then came the rise of family-friendly venues like Chuck E. Cheese and the growing perception that arcades were unsafe, and that all contributed to their decline. By the late 90s, most standalone arcades, they were gone. They were replaced by a handful of machines in either bowling alleys or movie theaters or sometimes even gas stations. My golden age was gone. But nostalgia has a way of reviving what's lost. In recent years, arcades have made a comeback. They started as things called barcades, believe it or not, again, hybrid spaces that mix classic games with craft beers and a retro vibe. Before long, you had esports arenas and retro games thrived there, and collectors paid top dollar for original cabinets. Pinball even made its own comeback. It's enjoying a renaissance as well, with new machines blending vintage design and modern technology. And friends, I want to take a moment right now to tell you about a place called the Galloping Ghost Arcade. It's in Brookfield, Illinois, and it's run by one of the nicest human beings that's ever been put on this planet. His name is Doc Mack. He owns and operates it. It is the world's largest arcade, several city blocks long. Soon to be stories, there'll be upper stories. And then he also has another building where there's pinball machines. And for one low price of the day, $20+, you get to play over 1,000, like 800. It's like 1,800 games. More than you could ever play in the entire day. And no other fee. You just pay the price and go. And you can come and go. You can leave, go to lunch, come back. It's heaven for folk like me, maybe like you too. If you've ever been to the Galloping Ghost, drop me a comment down below, please, and let me know what your experience was like. Every time I go, shake hands with the doc, get my picture taken with him, and we talk about the good old days when those machines ruled the world. Now, the arcades, though, may never return to its former glory, or maybe they will, who knows? But its spirit will live on in our memories, in our basements, even. I have a few in my basement. And in new spaces where old and young people play together. But there's a nostalgia boom as we speak. As I mentioned, vinyl and retro gaming are booming. Why is nostalgia driving such a massive boom in retro products? Well, it's numbers, baby. Let's take vinyl records. In 2025, the global vinyl market was valued at 2.42 with a B billion dollars, projected to be more than double that by 2032. Vinyl is not just for us boomers anymore. It's over 35% of buyers are under the age of 35. And 42% of US millennials now prefer vinyl for its nostalgic appeal. Indie record stores account for 40% of sales and limited editions. And there's colored vinyl now and premium packaging. And all are in high demand. Why vinyl? It's more about sound quality. It's the ritual, flipping through the records, admiring that cover art, feeling the weight of the disc. In a world of streaming and instant access, vinyl offers mindfulness, tangibility, a sense of connection to the past, and yes, ownership of the product. And then there's retro gaming consoles. The retro gaming console market has exploded, valued at 3.8 billion this year, with a projected 10% annual growth over the next 10 years. Millennials and Gen Xers are driving the demand, but younger generations are actually starting to discover classic games for the first time. Restoration services, social media communities, and modern mini consoles, as we found, are fueling this trend. The launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 in 2025 this year has broke records. It sold 3.5 million units in only 4 days. But it's not about new tech, is it? It has retro consoles in it. The store offers you the SNES, the NES, now GameCube. Reminds you of the original cartridges and the scan manuals, right? Because even the scan manuals are sometimes part of these packages that you can purchase. The economics are real, friends. The resale market is projected to hit 3.5 billion by 2027, and nostalgia-driven campaigns can boost brand engagement by up to 30%. And now, also, it's not just games. Hollywood is beginning to cash in too. From The Office remakes to a brand new Harry Potter show coming out. There's a new Shrek coming out. We just had a new Superman reboot. Remakes are everywhere. Streaming platforms are betting big on familiar stories, banking on that emotional pull of the past to attract subscribers. And for studios, it's just a safe bet. They've made money on it once. Certainly, it'll make money again. There's already a built-in fan base. The marketing risks are lower. It's a guaranteed buzz. Of course, not every reboot is going to succeed, as we know. Audiences are starting to crave originality again, and some remakes fall flat. But the nostalgia wave is not showing any sign of slowing down. But now let's just take a minute and look at the psychology and the economics of nostalgia. Why is it selling so well? And again, the answer is both emotional and economic. Let's look at emotional first. Nostalgia taps into that deepest memory and feelings that your brain has. It creates a sense of comfort and belonging and authenticity. Again, studies are showing that 75% of consumers are more likely to buy when an ad evokes some form of nostalgia for them. And nostalgic content generates twice the emotional response of standard marketing. Millennials and Gen Z are especially responsive to nostalgia-based marketing. 61% of millennials and 68% of Gen Z say nostalgia improves their perception of every brand. Again, it's not just about the past, right? We talked about that. It's driving the future. Let's talk about economics. Nostalgia, friends, is a goldmine. Brands that revive vintage packaging have seen a 26% sales lift, right? Let's say that you're the Tide detergent company. You go back to your old marketing for Tide and watch your sales increase by 26%. Limited edition throwback products improve purchase intent by 27%. Streaming platforms see subscribers spike when they reboot classic shows. And nostalgia-themed email marketing that is all based in nostalgia, have a 19% higher open rate. Isn't that crazy? Now, of course, there are risks. Like I mentioned, we do still want original content, don't we? Overuse leads to nostalgia fatigue, and inauthentic campaigns also backfire when you try to reach back to who you were, but you might have such a reputation in the present that even reaching back is not going to help you. So let's bring it back to the present, shall we? Nostalgia isn't just a private emotion. It's a shared experience. It's a cultural force, and it shapes how we live, shop, and connect, as I mentioned. On TikTok, hashtags like hashtag nostalgia, hashtag throwback, and hashtag Y2K have billions of views on it. I just checked. Young creators are actually remixing retro styles in. They're doing things like unboxing their vinyl records and showing stories about the good old days that they never actually lived through. And for Gen Z, nostalgia is both new and old. It's a way to stand out, to belong, and to make sense of this world that seems to be in flux. It's kind of a crazy time that we're living in. There's all kinds of preservation outlets out there today as well that are trying to keep the past alive. One of the most beautiful things about nostalgia is the way that it inspires preservation. Fans, collectors, and communities are working tirelessly to save what otherwise might be lost. You have online archives like the Internet Archive that are scanning and sharing thousands of old game manuals and box art and retro books that you can't buy any longer. No one's selling them, right? A more common term these days is called abandonware. The companies that owned the actual intellectual properties and the trademarks and things are long gone. No one owns those things, so they're out there and they're dead. And without these outlets, we would never be able to see these things again. But collectors are restoring vintage consoles. They're scanning in manuals and they're uploading them for future generations to appreciate. Fan communities are also thriving. Reddit, Discord, all over YouTube. People trade tips, they share stories. Channels like this where I can come and talk about the good old days. I watch many, many, many rare game find videos, shows on records. Indie publishers like Limited Run are bringing back physical manuals and actual limited runs of games, full color box art, even new games for old systems. And it's not about nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's about honoring the past, learning from it, and keeping its spirit alive. Friends, in a world that moves faster every single day, where AI is all anyone cares to talk about, these acts of preservation are acts of love and a way to say, this mattered to people and it still matters today. But let's look forward for a minute. Why is nostalgia hitting us so hard today? Well, it's because we're living in a time of rapid change again. Uncertainty and digital overload. It's everywhere. The past feels safer, simpler, more real. But nostalgia isn't about escaping, right? I don't want to go back and be 12 again, right? But it's a resource. It's a way to draw strength from memories. It's a way to reignite the imagination in a world that doesn't care about imagination. As one recent study put it, nostalgia is fundamentally future-oriented. It helps us cope with that stress and manage anxiety and stay connected to what matters. It's not about living back in the past. I'm not trying to hide from today. It's about using the past to navigate the present. So, the next time you find yourself longing for a mall arcade or a record store, which you can now go back into, or the ritual of unboxing a new game, don't feel silly. You're not just reminiscing. You're tapping into a wellspring of emotion and memory, and more importantly, hope. It's a resource that's more valuable now than it's ever been. So as I wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Nostalgia is not just a feeling. Like what I've been doing with you this evening, it's telling a story. A story we tell ourselves about who we were, who we are, and who we want to be. It's a bridge between generations. It's a source of comfort in hard times. And it's a spark for creativity and connection. So, go out and spend some vinyl. Fire up your old arcade machines that you have emulated at home, or fire up that old console, the real one that you have sitting in the closet. Get those SNESs, NESs, Atari 2600s out and slam a cartridge in. Or maybe just daydream about the Luca pizza at the food court. And then know that you're part of something bigger. It's a community of memory, hope, and imagination. And friends, That's what I wanted to tell you about. I want to thank you for joining me here this week on my rabbit hole journey back through malls, arcades, and nostalgia. I had a blast. This is so much fun. I get so much joy and excitement out of putting each one of these shows together. I hope you do too. And it's my hope, I don't ever want to play the YouTube game where every 5 seconds I put like and subscribe up on the screen. I'll always wait to the end, like now, and just say, if you've had as much fun as I've had tonight, would you think about liking and subscribing? Like, I don't ever plan to monetize this. I'll never have the viewers to do it anyway. And that's okay. I don't need them. Maybe I just need you. And if you just drop me a comment, if you absolutely hate this show and you can think of 9,000 ways why I should quit and 10,000 ways I can make it better, you can tell me that down here too. Or maybe, just maybe, you liked what you heard. And you could even say that too. Make an old man happy. Well, that's it for this week. I'm sure next week my mind will take me to an even more intriguing place. And when it does, come on back and I'll tell you about it. Have a great week, friends. We'll see you next week.